Okay, so remember from last week who did we do last week?
Albert Einstein.
Albert Einstein, who could forget? Has anyone been up to see you, Edith?
No.
Oh, come on, people, let's go see that.
We'll have to serve coffee.
Oh yes, we'll have to do something, we'll make an event out of it. It's really...
Wine would be nice, Edith.
What?
A glass of wine.
Oh, a glass of wine. We're looking for something stronger than coffee. But yeah, so yeah, you should go up and see that sculpture. It's really, really amazing. So we were going to end on that, but then subsequently, I had been approached privately by 5 people, independent of each other, to do human evolution. And so I thought, we'll extend this by 1 more week. Right? We'll extend it by 1 more week, and it would make a lot of sense if I just added 1 more scientist, and that scientist, of course, would be?
Darwin.
Yes, Charles Darwin. Now, when we get into the evolution section portion, which will be in the next few weeks, we'll be doing that. We'll be talking about the adaptations and evolution, the science behind it, or the theory behind it. Today what we're going to focus on is, how did he get there? How did he come to these thoughts and these conclusions? Who is he? What was his life like? And so today we're going to talk about the life of Charles Darwin, the struggle of Charles Darwin, and the things that he went through to bring him to the acclaim that he now has. It might interest you to know that his father, Robert, is a doctor. He's a physician and a financier. All right, what does that suggest to you?
Money.
Oh yes, money, definitely money. So he is a prominent person in society. This is in England, and it doesn't end with him, because the mother of Charles Darwin is Susanna Wedgwood.
Oh my goodness, like in China?
Susanna Wedgwood, I'm hearing you all, I hear the buzz, buzz, buzz throughout the room. Who is she? She's the heiress of what?
Wedgwood dynasty.
Yes, the Wedgwood dynasty. And so, of course, I had to put a couple of samples up here for you to admire. All right. So more oohs and ahs, please. Ooh, ah. 1 more, I have 1 more. Ooh.
That's beautiful.
So, oh my gosh. Do you think Charles Darwin comes from a wealthy family? Yeah, he comes from a very wealthy family. This is a very, very wealthy family. So that's interesting. Does he have any real cares in the world? Shouldn't have any real cares in the world. Also, the family is very well known as free thinkers. Free thinkers. So this is a time, yes, this is a time in the 1800s, European 1800s, where there's a revitalization of this kind of free thinking, because this is on the heels of Isaac Newton, and new scientific thought is being accepted, isn't it? All right, so he comes from a home that is wealthy. He comes from a home of free thinkers. Do you think that they host a lot of influential people?
Yeah.
Yes, they really do. And they're also, on both sides of the family, Wedgwood and Darwin, they are members of the Unitarian Church, which is also very open. And free thinking and accepting of new ideas. So this is the environment that Charles is growing up in. This is the home. This is the house that he grew up in. Not bad? Right? Yes, not too shabby. Is that what you said? Yes. And he is the second to youngest child of 6. This is not a portrait of them. I just had to find a family with kids. Just to give you, some frame of reference. He's the second to youngest. Does that signify spoiled? Maybe a little spoiled. You know, there's 6 kids. He's the last of the last 2, so a little bit spoiled. This is an actual portrait. There he is. There's little Charles. What?
He's adorable.
Isn't he adorable? And I think it's great that he's holding a pot of plants. All right, as we know, he grows up to be very interested in botany. So there he is holding that, and there he is with his younger sister. Now, please don't let the ruffled collar fool you. He is a boy, totally all boy, all right? He is constantly out in nature. He's exploring. He probably had lots of frogs in his back pocket. And I do believe, it certainly sounds from everything I've read, that the family indulged the children because apparently he and his older brother had a makeshift science lab in the garage. So the parents allowed them to have a lab in the garage. We can only imagine the things that happened there. And then, of course, you can't be a self-respecting little boy without your bug collection. So he did. He had his bug collection. He was in particular fond of beetles. All right, beetles held. You're getting all squeamish, Pat. You want me to turn the slide here? Better? Yes. So he loved beetles, and he had an extensive beetle collection. Now his dad was a what? Doctor. So what do you want your son to do?
He's a doctor.
Follow in your footsteps. And so Dad sent young Charles to Edinburgh Medical School, and he wants him to follow in his footsteps and become a doctor, but Charles was just not interested. He found the lectures boring. It didn't hold any real interest for him. However, while he's there was a group that was fascinating to him. He joins what is known as the Plinian Society. He becomes a member of the Plinian Society, and does anybody know what that is?
No.
It is the study of natural history. Sounds like the kind of thing where he would fit right in, doesn't it? Yeah, he fit right in, and he starts making connections there, because it's a really large group. Again, this is the trend. This is the trend in Europe at the time. So he's very happy being a member of the Natural History Plinian Society. But he's there to study medicine, correct? Not really interested in the lectures. And at some point, if you're a student of medicine, you're going to have to observe a what?
Surgery?
Yes, you're going to have to observe a surgery. This is pre-anesthetic. All right? Okay, so this is in the mid-1800s, and he's watching a surgery, and how do you think he reacts?
Looks like an execution room. Yeah.
It does look like an execution room, Peggy. That's a great observation. It's a great observation. So it does. Well, he got sick. Yes, Dennis, you're right. In fact, what?
I'm just laughing. He got sick.
He got sick and he ran out of the room. In fact, he ran so far that he just never came back. He just kept running. That wasn't for him, all right? He saw that and it wasn't for him. And the person having surgery was a child, too. Yeah, so he couldn't handle it. He absolutely could not handle it. So Dad's all worried. What's going to happen to my youngest son? What's going to become of him? I mean, he doesn't have any money worries, but he still needs to be, a proper man in society, right? He has to have a profession. And so he decides, all right, if that's not going to work out, then I am going to send my son to Cambridge University to become a priest. I'm waiting for the laughter to go through the room. Okay, so he is studying to become a priest. How do you think that goes? Yeah, that one doesn't go too well either. What?
It doesn't work well for a Unitarian.
Yeah. So now we've got a young man. The professions that his father chose for him are not working out very well. It seems like he's at a dead end. He's adrift. He has nowhere to go. What's he going to do? And then all of a sudden, fate steps in. And he hears from one of his Plinian Society connections that there is going to be a ship going out. Have you ever heard of this ship?
Yes.
Oh yes, it's become quite famous, hasn't it? The Beagle. And the Beagle is going to be going out, and it's a surveyor ship. The captain of this ship is looking for someone to join him, and he's very particular. He's being very particular. He is looking for a gentleman, an academic, a scholar. He's looking for an English gentleman to join him on his ship. Does that sound odd?
Yes.
It sounds very odd, doesn't it? Especially, we remember our pirate series? All right, so this is definitely not a pirate ship. All right, this is actually the Royal Navy is conducting the survey. But it will make sense if you understand who the captain of the ship is. The captain of the ship is Robert Fitzroy. And why would we understand him wanting an English academic, scholarly gentleman? Well, because Captain Fitzroy himself is a scientist. He is a scientist. Do you know what he's best known for? Yes, the barometer. Yes, and he is the forerunner of meteorology. He is the first meteorologist, Captain Fitzroy. He becomes Admiral Fitzroy, and this is the barometer that he invented. He also wrote a book, very simply titled The Weather Book. The Weather Book, yes. Yes, that is one of his first publications, but he very diligently documents how to watch for clouds, what the clouds are telling you, how to forecast weather, and he's well known for that. I'll let you read this plaque for Admiral Fitzroy. He also becomes the governor of New Zealand. Okay, so everybody has that? All right, now what we know then is Captain Fitzroy, captain at the time, is looking for someone to go with him to do this mapping expedition. And he has to have a naturalist because he's going to stop along all of these various places, right? Who else would he have to have with him?
Navigator.
Yes, a navigator. I'm just going to tell you because I'm not giving you enough of a hint. An artist. An artist. Why would an artist have to be there?
Report. Do the map.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, you're all right. Yes, so Conrad Martins is the artist that is also on the ship with Darwin the naturalist, and he is going to be sketching the things that they find. He's going to be documenting this in pictorials. Here's what you would expect, right? These are some of his renderings, and you would expect this to come from the artist, correct? On such a voyage. But I also wanted to show you some of the other things that he found so inspirational that he sketched. Can you imagine seeing that? Yeah, I'd get my pencils and paper out right away too. Here's another one. And I have one more for you. Oh, you've seen this? That one's famous. It's beautiful, right? It's beautiful. All right, so we've got, a regular crew, a ship's crew, naval men, and you've got the naturalist, Darwin, you've got an artist, you've got the captain, and so now the captain's looking, because he's a scientist too, he wants to have some like intelligent dinner conversation, and so he's entertaining these guys. They were companions for him as well. Do you know how long this trip lasted, by the way? What?
3 years.
5 years.
5 years?
5 years. Yes, they were out for 5 years, exactly. Yep. All right, yes, so they're out for 5 years, and they're going to travel all around. They're going to map these areas. And we know a couple of famous things. There are a couple of famous things from this 5-year trip that I think probably everybody in the room knows. First of all, in Argentina, Charles Darwin and company come across this skeleton, this skull. They find this skull, and it happens to be, it's an extinct animal, but they happen to know that this skull is from this adorable little creature. That's a sloth, all right? They're very cute, aren't they? They're very cute. They're trending now. They're in children's movies, right? Everybody loves the sloth, and we know that they're super cuddly. Look how cute he is. He's so, so cute. Except the skull that Darwin and company found in Argentina, the skull was the size of an automobile. Yes. All right. So the perspective of what they discovered, here's the perspective of what they discovered.
Sweet and cuddly, it's not.
Oh my gosh, could you imagine seeing such a thing? Oh my goodness, yeah, I don't think that we'd be cuddling up to them. So that was something of great surprise and interest, this giant tree sloth, the skull that was discovered. Another thing that was very surprising that you may have heard of was the fossilized impressions of seashells that were so far above sea level. They were high above sea level. Now, at this time, all right, we're talking about the mid-1800s. At this time, how old was the Earth?
Billions.
How old did they think it was?
Yes. How old did they think it was?
Oh,
What was the accepted age of the Earth?
6,000.
6,000 years. Yes, you're right. Yep, you're all right. Yes, the accepted age of the Earth was 6,000 years. And so these things that Darwin is seeing, it's all piling up. He's filing it back in his mind. All right? These fossilized seashells on mountain tops, this giant sloth, and how could all of this have happened in 6,000 years? So everything's starting to build up. Now he's probably most famous for what? Yes, everybody knows, everyone associates Charles Darwin with Galapagos Islands. Do you know he was actually only there for like 5 months? So he was there for a few months, and the whole trip was 5 years long, and his studies, his continued studies, went on for 20 years. But we pinpoint this revelation in his mind right here. It's not necessarily true, but there were some pretty astounding things that he saw in these islands. First of all, we all know what that is. Iguana, yes, but on Galapagos, some of the iguanas were underwater. They could swim underwater. They could live underwater as well as above the surface. Another stunning thing to Charles Darwin, and he documents meticulously. His journals are absolutely meticulous. But one of the things that is really outstanding is the turtles. All right? So the turtles, each island has turtles, but each island has a turtle rocking a different shell. Okay? It's got a different shell. So here's one. Here's another. There's another. You see the differences? You see how very clearly? Now this is a concentrated area. There's just these different islands. But the turtles of each island are different. Their shells are very, very different. The other astonishing thing about them, have you ever heard of the giant turtles?
Yes, tortoises.
They're giant turtles. In fact, Darwin jots down that they were able to ride the backs of the turtles. They rode the turtles. Darwin writes he had trouble keeping his balance, but he gave it a try. You know, his curiosity got the better of him, and he had a little bit of trouble staying on. But he rode the turtle. Now, Galapagos Island is extraordinary in its beauty and its variety of species. So I thought what I would like to do is take just a minute or two, and we'll see a little bit of it. You want to see that? All right. Yeah, and he was too cute. I had to fit him in there somewhere.
This living laboratory of evolution helped to inspire Charles Darwin and continues to offer a unique opportunity to explore a pristine natural ecosystem. The Galapagos Islands are located 620 miles, or 1,000 kilometers, from the South American mainland, but a world apart from anywhere else on Earth. The archipelago and its surrounding waters, located where 3 ocean currents converge, are famed for the unique animal species found nowhere else on Earth, including marine iguanas, giant tortoises, flightless cormorants, and a diverse variety of finches. The islands have 2 airports, Isla Baltra and Isla San Cristobal, which are serviced by regular flights from mainland cities Quito and Guayaquil. As water temperatures change and seasons shift, different types of wildlife become more or less plentiful, so it's worth keeping a must-see species list in mind when planning your itinerary.
Who wants to go?
Go
I'd
with.
like to go.
I'd like to go. You want to go, Peggy? No. Yes, all right, yeah, let's go. Let's go. I definitely want to go. I want to see if I can stay on top of a giant turtle. See how good my balance is.
They hiss.
Oh, do they hiss? I don't think I would like that. Okay, so one of the things that really stuck in his mind, Darwin, were the finches. The finches. And these are actual sketches made from that trip. And what do you notice different about these finches?
Beaks.
Yes.
Beaks get smaller.
Yes, the beaks, yeah, they're different. Smaller, different length. That's long, that's short. It's just, it's so interesting to him that they would have these adaptations, right? And the adaptations are very unique to the food that's available to the finches on their particular island. So their beaks are made to more easily consume food, the food that's available to them. This is where he gets this idea, all right? He starts this idea of, this is an actual page from his journal. This is from Darwin's journal. I wrote this in. This is me right here. I wrote it in red so you would know that, and I'm telling you so you know. But that's where he starts to get the idea for the thought of common ancestor. And we'll go into that in the next few weeks. Okay, so here's where, here's the islands. Does that look like a seahorse to anybody else but me? Does it? All right, good, thank you. Yes, I needed that reassurance. So what he's finding is all of these little islands have, his specimens have island-specific adaptations. All right, so he's got it all written down, he's filing it away in the back of his head, and eventually all of these things are going to converge, and he comes to certain conclusions. Now, remember we talked about the crew, right? What do you think they thought of this Darwin guy?
Weird.
They did. They thought it was weird. First of all, he had seasickness the whole time. The whole time. Yeah, 5 years. If he wasn't, while they were out to sea, he spent most of his time hanging over. Also, he's there as a naturalist, and he's supposed to be collecting specimens, right? That's what he's supposed to be doing. But he seems to be like going above and beyond the call of duty. He's just messing up the whole ship with all his junk. They call it his junk. He's got piles and piles and piles of junk. And so what he does, what Darwin does, is he has to package it all up and ship it back to England whenever they're at port. And he does it with his notes. He's explaining everything, and this is what you need to do, and this is where I found it, and blah, 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 blah. And he ships this all back to England. But what he doesn't know is, because he's away, when he does that, his specimens and his notes are being read at scientific events in places like the Royal Society. All right, so while he's away for these 5 years, he is actually developing a reputation for being very meticulous in note-taking, and he's gaining in reputation as a naturalist. And he doesn't even know. He's just out to sea. You know, he's just traveling all around the world. All right, here's a little look at the voyage that they took. This is how far they went. Yes? Can you imagine? Can you imagine being sick that whole time too? Okay, so when he gets back, what does he find? Wow, he's got some respect. He is respected. So I'll bet that's a huge relief to his dad, who was very worried about him, right? So now he's got some respect, and he is considered a naturalist. All right, so if he's got the respect, he can start thinking about what?
Marriage.
Yeah, he can start thinking about marriage. He can put away his beetle collection, and he can get married. So he does. This is Emma, and I'm sorry to have to say, because last week when Einstein married his cousin, everyone seemed to be a little bit, what? This is his cousin Emma, and she is a cousin on his mother's side, so she's also a what? Yes, so she's an heiress as well. So now you've got all the money is just staying right in the family, right? They decide to buy a home together, and they can afford a beautiful, lovely home, and they do. This is it. This is in Kent. Isn't it gorgeous? It's gorgeous, and it has gardens, as you can imagine. So I got some photos. Look at that. I mean, that's current, but he would have done that, and she was very into the gardening as well. So were the children, actually. All right, so he's got this beautiful home. It's out in the country. He can study nature out there. His wife is absolutely dedicated, devoted to him. It is quite a love match. This is his study. Nice, right? He continued to have sickness throughout his entire life, like maybe he got a parasite or something. In all of his travels, it would resurface. He was sick all of his life, and Emma was very dedicated and devoted to him, and took care of him his whole life. They did have an opportunity to start a family. Yes, they actually had 10 children. Yeah, they had 10 children. Two of the children did not survive to adulthood. Yeah, 2 of the children did not survive, but they had quite a brood. And ultimately, the journals and all the surveying and everything that came from that 5-year-long trip was published. So Darwin and Fitzroy published in these volumes. And of course, these were bestsellers. It was a bestseller, the volumes of the Voyages of the Beagle. And so now, with the publication of a bestseller, what happens to Charles Darwin? Well, he becomes a member of the Royal Society. Isn't that wonderful? Yes, so his father didn't need to worry at all. He found his place in society, and he has got some prestige. So now with all of this, his life is settled, and so now he wants to pursue his interests. And the next thing he's interested in is he goes around and he's chatting with the local farmers, because what he's really curious about now is crossbreeding. All right, vegetables, animals, he's very interested in crossbreeding. And this leads to the idea of adaptations in species, right? The adaptations of different species. What was the belief system at the time?
They're all different?
That God created every species, right? That God created everything at the creation of the world. And that's how everything was and always has been. So this idea of crossbreeding might have been accepted in plants, but then when he started to talk about animals, well, then that was causing a stir, as you can imagine, right? Yes, that was causing quite a stir. But he wasn't the only one. Other people were having these thoughts as well. And his wife, Emma, who was devout to her church, she was Unitarian too, she was absolutely terrified that if her husband kept going down this path, that he would not receive salvation, he would not receive eternal life, that this would mean his eternal damnation. She was terrified. She was terrified, and she would say to him, I always believed that we would spend eternity together as husband and wife, and if you do this, if you keep studying this, if you keep thinking this way, if you write this and publish this, you'll be damned, and we will not spend eternity together. And he loved her. He absolutely adored her and adored his children. So he didn't. He just kind of sat on everything because he didn't want to bring this onto his family, his wife or his kids. So he just kind of sat on it, and he just kept studying and going about his business. Now, he had 2 friends that were the exact opposite. All right? So he has his friend Hooker, who is a botanist, and he's very interested in this crossbreeding of plants and vegetables. And he's experimenting with it. So this friend that's a botanist is encouraging him to keep going with these thoughts and ideas. He also has another friend, Lyle, who is a geologist. All right, you remember the fossils? Right? The geologist is saying the Earth has to be more than 6,000 years old. We have to keep looking into this. We can't just accept things because we're afraid. So he's very encouraged by his 2 close friends, but discouraged by his wife. So he's got this conflict. He's in conflict. Now, in 1844, an anonymous book gets published. This book is suggesting, it was anonymous, we know who it is now, that creation didn't arrive divinely, but that it developed naturally. The person who wrote this book and published this book did so anonymously because why?
Damned for life.
He was a heretic.
He was a heretic, exactly. That's exactly right. He was afraid. We come to know later, this is the author. He was a Scottish journalist, actually, but he didn't reveal himself for 40 years, did not reveal himself. But the backlash, and it was a good thing he was anonymous, the backlash was absolutely huge. All right, they came down on this idea, and it comes from the very top. All right, so Queen Victoria had read that pamphlet, and she was very quick to condemn it as well. All right, so what does this do to Darwin? Is he any more anxious to publish his findings and his thoughts? No, it makes him even more, skittish about it. So what he decides to do is he's going to put it on hold. But what he wants to do, if he ever does get enough courage to publish, he wants to make sure that it is rock solid, that he's got everything backed up, and that he has got this so thoroughly researched that the criticisms that rain down upon him, he would be able to withstand that. So he decides he's going to study a very simple life form. Do you know what he studied?
Frogs. Barnacle.
Barnacles. All right, let's take a look at barnacles. Just what you wanted to do this afternoon. Because they're really actually pretty adaptable.
These crusty little creatures glued to the seashore actually know how to get around. They attach themselves to boats, rocks, and even hitch rides on whales and develop into adults. They build hard plates surrounding their bodies that open to feed and reproduce and close protectively during low tide and other harsh conditions. But how do they survive these radically changing habitats? Long-term work by a Brown University research team with funding from the National Science Foundation has confirmed that a central metabolic protein, MPI, and the gene encoding the protein is what helps the barnacle survive extreme environmental changes. Different versions of the MPI enzyme are present at different levels depending on where the barnacles have settled in the rocky shoreline. One form performs well under high stress, like on a hot day at low tide. The other form does better under low stress. This allows barnacles to survive and prosper in fluctuating extremes and has prepared them for success in an ever-changing environment. The same methods used to show how barnacles' genes adapt to those extremes could be used by entomologists who want to know how honeybees are adapting to climate change, or crop scientists concerned about productivity in a more stressful environment.
So he studies these barnacles, and because they're so adaptable, he gets them from all over the world. He has people sending him barnacles. He's getting more and more well known as he's doing this, and he's finding, and this is just totally substantiating what he's believing, because you see how highly adaptable they are, but they have to change. So they're changing to adapt to their environment, even if they attach themselves to a whale. All right, they attach themselves to whatever, and then they make the adaptation. So he thought that barnacle study would be, a few months. Guess how long it took him to thoroughly research those? 8 years. Can you imagine studying barnacles for 8 years? But he did. Now, he's going to get ready to publish. He's going to get ready to publish, and he is prompted by 2 life-altering events. The first one is his daughter. This is Annie. This is Annie, and she's 10 years old, and she dies of tuberculosis. And he's devastated. He's devastated, and it totally shakes his belief in God. That his little girl was taken, and so he goes through that grieving experience. It's shortly after that this man, Alfred Wallace, he's a naturalist too. He's in Indonesia at the time, and he's coming up with a very similar theory. And now remember that Darwin is becoming well known throughout the world, correct? So Wallace writes a letter to Darwin, and in this letter, he is stating very similar thoughts that Darwin has been working on for 20 years. For 20 years, he's been working on these things. And so he starts to think, if I don't do something with my work, someone else is going to come in and what?
Steal it.
Yeah. Someone's going to claim it. Yes. Somebody's going to beat me to the punch here. And I've been working on this for, my entire adult life. Now, this man, Alfred Wallace, has every right to publish because he's come up with it independently, right? Darwin realizes that, and so both are presenting their thoughts together. They're presenting their thoughts together. But it's Darwin, of course, who has done so many years of research. And he is finally ready, now that he's come out, and he publishes this, The Origin of Species. You've all seen this, right? You have all seen this. Now, he's bracing himself because what's going to happen?
Damnation.
Is the storm coming? The storm is coming. The storm is coming. He's bracing himself. He's done it. He's published all of his research, and he's going to get ready for the backlash. And it does happen to come. Remember Fitzroy? Fitzroy writes, I regret that I took that man. Yeah, so that was very sad because they had become close. Darwin's former teacher at Cambridge comes down really hard on him and writes him a personal letter chastising him, and that hurts him too. So he certainly does get backlash. But overall, in the scientific community, it's mixed reviews. It's not as bad as he thought it was going to be. It's mixed reviews. So from 1844 to the time that he published in 1859, I've just impressed myself that I remembered those 2 years. In that little space of time, how attitudes had changed. Remember the first one that came out and everything that came down on him? Yeah, it didn't. Just in that space of time, it didn't. It came out to mixed reviews. It wasn't too bad. Now, mind you, Darwin, when he wrote Origins, do you know that he never used the word evolution? It does not appear in Origins of Species until the 6th edition. The 6th edition has that word, evolution. Okay? It has never once been out of print. It's always been available since 1859. And from this subdued response that he got, it gave him the courage to follow up with The Descent of Man. Now, here we go. Now, this is what's going to cause the big problems, okay? But it's what gave him the courage to continue on. And that's what we're going to be talking about next week, the next couple of weeks. He's also written, he has done such incredible research that he's written several other books. Did you know that? Yeah, he's got a whole bunch of publications, different books. Okay, so now Darwin has been accepted as the years go by. He's more and more accepted. In fact, by the time he died, he was so accepted. Here's his stone. Do you know where that's located?
England? Galapagos?
Westminster Abbey?
Westminster Abbey. I love who said Galapagos? He said that. He is buried in Westminster Abbey, all right? Not far from Isaac Newton. He's not far from Isaac Newton, is where he's buried. All right, so that's how much in this very short amount of time. Isn't that incredible that his writing, his theories, his scientific acumen was respected enough that he was buried in Westminster Abbey? Is that a real surprise to a lot of you? Yes. Okay, so what has happened since he passed away? You know, you always have to take where they bring you, and what do you have to do? You have to keep going, right? They want you to. Keep going, keep going. What do we have today?
DNA.
So we're going to take a look at that. How does that factor into the theory? All right. What about mutations? That's part of it. Are we able to mutate things? We're going to take a look at that. And then there's also something really, really fascinating that I will share with you next week. It's called a genetic switch. Yeah, like a light switch. A genetic switch that would turn something on or shut something off. All right, so next week, we're going to go from Darwin to the explanation of, really, we're going to talk about the descent of man, and we are going to be talking about human evolution. Are you ready for that?
Ooh, yes.
All right, I'm going to do the very best that I can. So, thank you for coming. Thank you, John. Yeah, and I will see you all next week.